About myself, I'm Bahrain-based businessman involved with my family business and then also involved with some of my own stuff. Studied in the US, graduated from Stanford in California, and I've been quite active building up companies for myself and my family over the past 15 to 16 years now. Just staying at it every day, you know, with the new companies and new efforts that we're working on. Educationally, I studied economics in college. It's been my passion. It's also my interest now. In my free time, I generally read The Economist, and it's sort of what I'm passionate about. I like the economy, especially the macro economy. And I enjoy thinking about things in economic terms when it comes to business decisions. So it's sort of, you can call it a hobby or an interest, but in addition to that, it's also, it's what I do, you know. I've been blessed to be working in a field that I've always been passionate about, you know, since I was a child. What's interested me is reading Business Week and reading The Economist and following business. At the time it was reading about businesses, which in effect is sort of like doing a case study in a compressed way. So obviously the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. I think of a lot of advantages, but not really many disadvantages. I think that's a combination of the circumstance, and my nature is to be generally a positive person. But the advantages, of course, are many. You know, when it comes to entrepreneurship, one of the key initial requirements is capital. You know, I've been fortunate to have access to capital both for myself and with the companies that I've done for the family. So that's an important, you know, core ingredient that has been a big advantage. And then, of course, the market reputation of the products and services that we offer in the country. You know, when I come and do something, it's in a way a continuation of that. And so the customer response to that is generally quite positive, because there's a lot of goodwill that has been created by, you know, my predecessors. And of course, the contacts and relationships around the Gulf have been quite beneficial to me. I can't think of any real disadvantages other than that perhaps when somebody does succeed as a part of a, you know, a well-reputed or wealthy or whatever background, perhaps the feeling of some people is that you know, that person did not have to try as hard, which perhaps there is quite some merit to that. But having said that, I think entrepreneurship is always difficult. So any help you can get is a blessing, you know. So I think maybe one disadvantage is that my story will never be a rags to riches story. If I am fortunate in achieving my goals, it will be to go from a good place to a better place. So I guess in a way that might be perceived as a disadvantage in terms of the mass market appeal of my story, you know. The requisite qualities for entrepreneurship are many. I mean, it's one of these professions that requires a great amount of persistence, and I think persistence would be the main word. But then in addition to that, you need to be very hardworking, very committed. It's sort of like, I'd compare it to being a player in a league where the requirements are very diverse, and every day or based on where the ball's position is and what your goal requirements are and what the expectation is of you, you need to perform a different skill. And so with entrepreneurship, one day you need to be a great negotiator, the next day you need to be a great leader with your team. The next day you need to be nice to some members of your team. Next day you need to be a little bit difficult to achieve the results that you want. So it's really a combination of skills. I think the main skill and requirement is just persistence. You hear that from many people who've made it, that without persistence you don't achieve your goals when it comes to business, because it's just a long marathon and you need to just do the same stuff every day to achieve the results. People, of course, the friendly nature of the people, the cosmopolitan atmosphere where you have people from all over the world here, and then also the slightly relaxed tempo of the country. I was born here. I tend to live a good part of the rest of my life here, but even though my business interests and my business ambition is perhaps to be, of course, based in Bahrain, but to have an increasing regional presence for the companies that I'm involved with. And so what I love the most about the country, I think, is the people, first and foremost. Of course, that's like maybe 70, let's say 80 or 70% of what constitutes happiness is the people who you have surrounding you. Because happiness, I think, comes from friendships and relationships more than anything in life. And so, we're blessed in Bahrain to be surrounded by nice people. I mean, it helps to make friends with nice people rather than people who are not nice. Aspiring entrepreneurs have a challenging environment if they enter into Bahrain today because of the macroeconomic picture, and that a few years ago oil prices were going up. Now they're kind of coming down. So the big picture is not as rosy as it used to be. However, there are always many niches where they can establish a presence. The first message before starting a business would be to look at a business that is expanding as opposed to a business that is in a sector that is expanding as opposed to a sector that is contracting. For example, e-commerce is an expanding sector. I mean, today, let's say less than maybe 1%, I'm guessing, of retail happens online in Bahrain and around the Gulf, whereas in the US that number is today 7%. So the expectation that's a growing industry. That's a good industry to enter into. You don't want to maybe enter a shrinking industry, in my view, because when you're entering a shrinking industry, the pie is constantly contracting. You have a lot of price competition between the parties who are competing, and so it's not a desirable situation. So the first message would be to pick a business in a sector that's expanding. And then the second message would be to pick a niche within that sector that is currently not being addressed. And then to somehow do things better, either by offering an innovative technology or by doing it at a more competitive price or by offering better service. And then even if it's not a technological innovation, it might be a service that is appealing or hip or cool or whatever you want to call it to the customer. So then after they feel out what they want to do, the first step after that would be to do a business plan and to identify, at least for the next 3 years, what the plan is, both in terms of the written parts of the business plan, as well as in terms of the requirements for capital and the expectation in terms of the profit and loss, because that will really give you a good guide for the next few years about what you intend to do. And then once the business starts, it leads to what I was saying initially, which is just to be just persistent, pushy. Sometimes it's not the best qualities that you would expect from someone you have dinner with or someone you're friends with or whatever, but it's the qualities that you need to have in the office in order to succeed, which is to be pushy, persistent, very good with constant follow-up, almost to an annoying level. But you need to keep people focused on achieving goals within a set timeline, because time is money. The more time that goes by, the more money you lose or the less money you earn. And so the point is that I think the overall guideline once the business starts is just to be on top of your stuff, basically, to put it colloquially. Just to be on top of your stuff and to do whatever it takes to get stuff done. Everything is secondary, or everything should be secondary to making the business a success. You should not, for example, put your shyness or your pride or whatever ahead of achieving financial success. So if it means you have to call 5 people, you have to just pick up the phone and call them. And just do everything that you need to get things done. And then also I would suggest, because entrepreneurship can be very stressful at times, especially for new entrepreneurs. I remember 10, 15 years ago when I first started, the stress was sometimes overwhelming, and now I don't really get stressed. And the key is to compartmentalize problems and compartmentalize the challenges, so that everything, no matter how big the challenge is, all you have is the 8 hours or 10 hours per day that you put into your office work. And that's it. It doesn't matter what happened yesterday. It doesn't matter what will happen tomorrow or next month or next year. All of that is irrelevant. All you have are these few hours per day to focus on getting your stuff done. As unemotionally as possible, wherever you can. That's